Okay, welcome everybody to our final mental health month webinar for 2025. My name is Carly Saw and I will be leading this one today. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands on which we're all meeting from today and pay respect to others past, present and emerging, and extend that to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples that are here with us today. Just briefly, we are Strawberry Seed Consulting. We help small to medium businesses across Australia with their HR and recruitment needs. We are quite passionate about mental health. We talk to a lot of our clients about it all the time. And also just generally as an advocacy, we're very passionate at Strawberry Seed about that topic. So that's why we've dedicated this month to talking about mental health. And, we want to ensure that we continue to not just support the employees of our clients, but also the employers with managing their mental health as well. So today we are going to be talking about burnout and what that looks like for managers and some strategies to manage it. And look, it's a lot to get through in like a 30-minute session, so I'm going to probably go over a little bit. But what I really want to do is make sure that, you walk away with a couple of practical things that you can implement to really make sure that you are aware of what it looks like, particularly as a leader or a business owner, and then how you can, help manage that. So I want to start by pointing out that we are human beings that are managing other human beings, right? So, whilst we often take on a lot of the load of other people and a lot of stress, we need to remember that we are allowed to be human and we're allowed to have days where we are not doing well and we need extra help, and that it's okay to ask for help. So, the World Health Organization defines burnout as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So that's sort of the formal definition of what burnout looks like. Now, from a leadership perspective, you often get this extra layer of emotional and relationship sort of strain that happens within your role because you're not just worrying about yourself, but you're worrying about your team as well. And so, there are signs that you might be moving into burnout or already in burnout. And those include emotional exhaustion. So this is when you're feeling like you constantly have to be on. It's just becoming more and more draining to be supporting others with, and, you're really feeling the toll of that. Decision fatigue is a big one because often as leaders, we need to make a lot of decisions and people are often coming to us with a lot of decisions. And so we can end up with a bit of decision fatigue where we actually start to have difficulty actually making decisions or caring about those decisions. And, we move into that because we're in that mental overload. Withdrawal, so it may be that you're no longer, feeling empathy towards other situations. You might be feeling really disengaged in the relationships around you, both internally in the organisation, but also externally, and avoiding just having difficult conversations. It can definitely impair your performance. So if you're really struggling to focus, to stay motivated, to be productive, to be creative, this can be a sign that you're in burnout. And there's always a lot of physical symptoms. So often it's trouble sleeping, headaches, your immune system is suppressed, so you're getting sick all the time. There's a lot of physical symptoms that can come along with burnout. So today I really want to not just look at what, not so much look at treating burnout, but preventing it in the first place, because it's a lot easier to stop yourself from getting to that point than it is to actually try and recover from it. So I'm going to start by talking about a couple of things that we need to be aware of around burnout, and then some of the sort of strategies and things that you might want to put in place to help recognise and also help you stop getting to that point. And the first one I want to talk about is energy, because often when we think about wanting to be more productive and more, and get more done, we're very fixated on time, right? So productivity is like trying to schedule things better and prioritize things better and be more effective and efficient. If I work harder, I'll get more done. And the reality is there's only 24 hours in a day, right? So you can't create more time. However, energy is our capacity, our capability of actually working efficiently and effectively. And that varies. It's not stable. It is not just 24 hours a day and that doesn't change. It fluctuates throughout the day, throughout the week, and it's influenced by so many different things. And often when we're trying to get more done, we're like, right, I need to manage my time better and I need to organize myself, or I need to work longer hours to get more done. But actually, the thing you really need to do is look at your energy and look at, it's influenced by so many things: sleep, nutrition, stress, workload, emotions. Um, if you don't manage your energy correctly, you're not going to have the energy to be able to get the things done, no matter how well you manage your time. So, if you're, running really well and you've got a lot of energy, you can focus, obviously you can be motivated, you can be quite creative, but when your energy levels are low, that's what actually leads to burnout. It also leads to mistakes and procrastination and other things. And the reason for this is because while time is finite, energy isn't. And so often while we might feel like we're running on empty, as humans, we can still continue to push ourselves through to get more done. So that's why we burn out, is because we go beyond our capacity, and we allow others around us to maybe drain some of our energy. So, we really need to think about the three areas that our energy fluctuates around, and it's our mental energy, our emotional energy, and our physical energy, because those three areas are going to make a big difference on our ability to concentrate, our ability to be motivated, our ability to be resilient, and also just whether we're tired, how alert we are, what our fatigue levels are. So, I think for me, the biggest shift is really thinking about, how do I manage my energy? How do I prevent things impacting my energy? And how do I structure my job and what I do, and how my day looks around my energy, so I'm the most productive that I can be, so I don't end up burnt out. Now I'm going to take my jacket off because it's getting quite warm in here. It's sunny here today, even though it's cool. Okay, so one of the things you need to do is assess your energy, right? You need to actually start to think about, if you've never done this before, you need to actually think about, you know, how do I actually operate? So when do you feel most productive? Are you a morning person? Are you an afternoon person? Are you an evening person? Because if you're a morning person, and when I talk about this in leadership training, I often ask that question, and 2/3 of the room might put their hand up and say, I'm a morning person. My next question is always, what's the first thing you do when you get into work? And almost to a person, they say, I check my emails. Now, if you're a morning person and you're the most focused and energetic and productive first thing in the day, should the first thing you be doing is checking your emails? Because when you're feeling energized and focused, that should be when you're working on things that require deep thought. So there's a difference between deep work and shallow work. Deep work is where you need to really think, make decisions, concentrate. It might be where you have the time where you have difficult conversations. It might be the time where you have to really sit down and write a proposal for something. Shallow work are things like emails. They're those jobs that need to get done, but they don't take a lot of brain power normally. So making sure we're using the time when we're most productive to actually do the things that we are in the right state to be productive at can make a really big difference. What are the activities that energize you, and what are the tasks that drain you? So if you're somebody who is introverted, you're going to be very drained by social interactions. You need to take that into consideration when you're setting what you're going to do for the week, when you're going to do certain tasks, because if you've got a big social event with a client the night before, your next day you're probably going to be pretty drained of energy. I myself, when I go to a day of training, I know the next day is not the day that I should be writing something that needs a lot of thought, because I'm going to be still replenishing my energy from the mental and physical toll it takes to deliver a whole day of training. So the other side of that is what energizes you. So what excites you? What are the things that give you energy? So if you're an extrovert, being around people gives you energy. So if you're stuck in a room all day working on a proposal or something like that, then you might find that incredibly draining on your energy. You need to make sure you're putting things in there that you'll recharge your energy somehow. So, managing the things that energize you versus the things that drain your energy, as best you can. We don't always have control, but where we do, that can actually make us so much more efficient and effective when we are have the right energy to bring to the right jobs. Now, how does food, hydration, and movement impact my body? That is different for everybody. Like with all these things, they're going to be individual, right? They're not going to be the same for everybody. So, I know myself, if I exercise in the morning, I'm going to have more energy throughout the day. Does it mean I always need to exercise in the morning? No, it doesn't, but it should. But particularly when I'm traveling and I know that I'm probably a little bit more tired and I've got a day of training, I always start my day with a quick walk, because I know that it's going to really make a difference to my day. I know I have to make sure that there's water available. And these are things you may know about yourself, but there may be things you have to think about. And how do your energy level shift, not just across the day, but across the week? Are you somebody who really finds they hit a really bad midweek slump? I'm one of those people. I am taking Wednesdays off, supposedly this year. And even if I do end up working a little bit as a business owner, my calendar is closed. So I'm working on things I want to, and I often work on things that actually give me energy on those days, things that I really am excited about. If I do work. But when I wasn't doing that, I was hitting lunchtime on Friday and I was just crashing and I was hopeless for the weekend. So for me, taking Wednesdays off when I can and then doing a little bit of work on a weekend actually works really well for me. Now, that's not going to be an expectation if you're an employee, but you've got to sort of try and work out how you can best um, align your energy with what you're doing. And you have to be aware before you can do that. So there's sort of four areas of energy, four different zones that we find ourselves in. Now, a lot of people think that you always want to be in the high energy, high time zone, right? That would be our ideal. That would be when we're in our peak performance. That would be when we are in the right energy levels, the right frame of mind to work on a piece of work, and we've got the time to do it. Doesn't happen very often, but we're more likely to end up in the focused execution zone in green, or the orange zone, which is busy but inefficient. So when we're what we need to also remember though, is we want to stay out of that red zone, because once we're there, we've got low time and we've got low energy, we are already probably in burnout. So we want to avoid getting into that zone as much as possible, because that's a recovery zone. If we're in that red zone, we need to be doing things to recover. So, you need to sort of think about what's sustainable. Now, obviously, ideally, that peak performance zone, that's when we can do really deep work. What research has shown is like really the reality is that we can probably only really sustain that level of really peak performance for about 90 minutes before we start to get a diminished return. Now we might be able to continue being productive, but we're not going to have the same level of concentration. We're going to be more distracted. We're more likely to make mistakes or take longer to make decisions. So what they've found is like a 15 to 20-minute recharge break can actually allow you to stay in that zone. But so you're also probably looking at a maximum of 4 to 6 hours a day that you could be in that zone. So it's unrealistic to think that you can just do a 10-hour day in the blue zone without having breaks to recharge. So the green zone is when we've got low time and high energy. Often we're really productive in that zone because we're really focused and we're going to get things done. But it can mean we rush decisions and things. And again, it burns more energy to be in that zone because you've got that extra pressure and stress. Now, when we're in that orange zone where we've got low energy but high time, that's when we want to do our shallow work. That's where we want to kind of, if you have a slump after lunch, use that time to do the things that don't need a lot of brain power but that just need to be done. So again, this is about aligning your energy to the jobs. You don't want to be trying to have a really difficult conversation with someone that's going to require a lot of thinking and, back and forth when you're in that orange zone. So again, this is about just visualizing and sort of thinking about where you're at. And if you're not getting different people need a different amount of sleep, but you need to renew your energy levels every day. So if you're not getting enough sleep and rest, then your energy levels are just not going to be up there. We need to recharge our batteries. Now, one of the things that can really drain our energy is around communication. So when we are not taking the time to actually communicate clearly to people, what it does is actually drains both our time and our energy. So, when you're just flicking it, you're really stressed and you're flicking out, a Slack message or a Teams message here and an email there, and you weren't as clear as you could be. And so now there's questions and people are coming back. And so now there's a back and forth on 3 or 4 things that if you had have stopped and taken a little bit more time to do it in the first place and been clear on your message, that wouldn't have been required. It also causes a lot of misunderstandings and conflict that don't need to be there. And all of these things are going to contribute to your stress and actually mentally drain you. So being very thoughtful about how you communicate with others. Now, you can't control how others communicate with you, but you can control how you communicate with others, can actually really reduce that. Another thing is things like people will send out an email that requires all these people to come back and forth. And, at the end of the day, should that have been an email, or should it have been, because that's now clogging up everyone's inbox. It's taking everybody's energy to read and manage these emails. And have I read this? And is this the latest one? Or should have that been a quick meeting? If you're just going to provide information to somebody, that when someone says, oh, that meeting could have been an email, if you're just providing a whole heap of information, does it need to be a meeting where everyone's there? Or could it be something that you record and send to people with the information they need? Or could it be an email? So it's not just about making sure you're communicating clearly, but also choosing the right method. And all of these things will save you time and save you energy. And both of those things will reduce the likelihood of you burning out. But I'll tell you, when they're not done well, it certainly increases the chance of you burning out. Now, mental fatigue, we really don't give enough credence to how much mental fatigue can impact us. Because when you're mentally fatigued, it just reduces your ability to do so many things effectively. So one of the things that can really mentally fatigue you is context switching. And that's when you're having to shift your attention from one task to the other, back and forth, because every time you do that, it requires a mental reset. And during that reset, our brains are actually trying to recall the information and reestablish flow in this other thing. So often, when we're getting interrupted all the time, and we're going to talk about boundaries in a minute, but often when we're getting interrupted all the time, or we're being called from this to this, oh, an email popped up, I need to respond to that. Every time we do that, we're using up energy and we don't get it back. So, when you need to do deep work and you need to concentrate, you need to make sure that you're protecting that time so that you're not constantly shifting from one thing to the other. And that's why multitasking itself is a myth, because we actually don't multitask. We just rapidly switch focus. And that just increases our load in terms of cognitive load, and it leads to more mistakes. It leads to, certainly a draining of energy. And there was a University of California study that found that it takes an average 23 minutes and 15 seconds to return to deep work focused mode when you've been interrupted. So if you're constantly moving from one thing to another, you're not really getting into a good deep focus mode at any particular time. So, you have to have that ability to block time out and to put things in place to stop that. But some of that stuff we put in places on ourselves, right? Because we're the ones that allow ourselves to switch from one thing to another. And the last one is decision fatigue. So every time we make a switch, it consumes, again, those mental resources. But what that means is when we're then having to make decisions later in the day, we're going to be less effective. And so I know myself, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but when you get towards the end of the day, sometimes you have, you're trying to work something out, or you're trying to think through a problem, and it just feels really overwhelming. But I often find if I just leave that and come back the next morning, suddenly it's really clear. And the reason is because by the time I was thinking about that, particularly if we're hitting 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm just not thinking as clearly. I don't have the energy and resources to go in and really be focused. But the next morning, once I've had a chance to reset and step away from it, it can make a massive difference, and suddenly the answer is really clear. So we need to remember that all of these things are just draining time out of our day. So some of it's around managing our time, but some of it's around managing our boundaries. Speaking of boundaries, we have to be the security on our boundaries. We are the ones that have to enforce boundaries. And I know that is much easier said than done, but there are ways to do it. So there's different types of boundaries. So time is one of them. So that might be scheduling time into your diary to do particular things at a particular time, and not letting someone overstep into that, like that I'm protecting that time because that's when I need to do this. And that's particularly important for deep work time. So if I need to work on, say, writing training or writing a webinar, I will often do that in a way that I've blocked out this block to do it, and I tell everybody I'm not available during that time. Now, emotional boundaries are making sure that we're not allowing others' emotions to impact and add more emotional labor to us. Now, this can be a bit trickier, but you have to ask yourself, do you have the capacity? And you don't always have the capacity to take on somebody else's issues at that moment. And you know what? You don't have to always say, be available to everyone all the time. So you can recognize, and often in your leadership training, I'll talk about when to have difficult conversations or when not to have a conversation. And when not to have it is when you're a bit depleted, you're not feeling like you're really thinking clearly, and someone's now going to be quite emotional, or they're bringing an issue to you. It's okay to say, actually, I need to think about this first. Can I come and grab you later? Or can we talk about this tomorrow? Because I need time to process this. So you're not saying we're not having the conversation. You're saying, I need to put a bit of, distance between it. Or you say to someone, look, I'd love to listen to you talk about this issue, but right now I just need to concentrate on this. So do you think maybe we'll have a coffee later, or maybe we'll catch up tomorrow, or maybe you have an EAP program you can send them to? But you've got to put some boundaries up because you've got to have your own oxygen mask on first, right? If you're burning yourself out at the detriment of others, then that's not going to be helpful because suddenly you're not available to them at all. Now, physical boundaries could be something like recognizing that you do need a break. It could be recognizing that I need to concentrate, and I know in this environment that I'm working in, I am going to get constantly interrupted. So today I'm going to book a meeting room and go and work from there, or today I'm going to work from home if that's possible, or really put some sort of boundary up to make sure that you've got the space that you need. It's also about recognizing when you need a break. So, a physical boundary can be, I am feeling a bit overwhelmed, I'm not thinking straight, it's noisy in here. I need to have a bit of a micro break. I need to get up and I need to step out. I need to just go for a walk around the block, do something to just interrupt that state so that I can re-energize a little bit before I come onto it. And even having a clear workspace. Like, I know myself when I'm feeling really overwhelmed, if my workspace is really messy, stopping and cleaning it up and just making it all organized can actually make me feel a lot more in control. And the biggest one for me is digital boundaries. So we are so controlled by our digital devices. We get email notifications, we get text notifications, we get Teams and Slack and, so many things like that. And these is really, really a personal thing because yes, people can send stuff to us, but we're the ones that can choose when we respond to things. Now, everything is urgent if you ask someone, and your lack of planning is not someone's urgent. Unless you're an emergency room doctor or a neuro surgeon, I always say to my team, no one will die if we don't respond to an email immediately. If you've set an expectation that you will immediately respond to every single email, then that's not healthy. You need to actually be able to go, you know what, right now I need to be concentrating. I need to not be responding. You need to turn off the notifications. If you're someone who, when an email pops up on the screen, you can't help but go and look at it, you need to turn those off. You need to put those boundaries in place for you. I mean, I've got an app on my phone that blocks out access to a majority of my apps from 9 to 11 during the week, and it's deep work. I can't get out of that mode, and it's really made a difference to the amount of times I pick up my phone. It also does it at 10:30 at night when should be going to sleep. It'll kick me out of whatever app that I'm in on my phone and say, nope, that's it, you can't get in here anymore. And you can also have it so that you can choose to get back in, but you have to wait 10 seconds. And, so again, how do you operate? What are the things that impede into your day? Can you not answer the phone if it rings? Turn it off. Turn your email off. We have a status set in our Slack channel that in our Slack that you can use, and it's a poo emoji, and it's called getting shit done. And if someone sets that tells the rest of the team that they are really trying to concentrate and get something done. And it sends out that message. So little things like that can tell other people, hey, I'm just not available right now. And it could be as simple as you telling your team. I had a client say, I've always been open door policy and it's just like I never get any work done. Well, you have to put some boundaries in there. Open door policy doesn't mean available 24/7. It means you can say, guys, I need to get something done for the next 2 hours. My door's going to be closed and I'm going to be concentrating and I'm not going to be responding to emails. If it's an emergency, text me. But after that, I'll be available. You're not never available ever again. And that might take time for people to adjust. When you've always said yes, people don't adjust well when you start saying no and putting in boundaries, but you have to be clear and consistent with them. And they have to be, there for a reason. Saying no is a leadership skill. And I like the positive no framework because it's not about going, no, go away, never again. It's about acknowledging someone's request. It's about stating what boundary you have and then offering an alternative. So look, I can see that you need help with this and I'm really happy to help you. Unfortunately, today is not going to be possible for me because I've already committed to doing X, Y, and Z. However, I can make time tomorrow. Let's put some time in the diary. Or have you asked so-and-so because so-and-so might be able to help you with that. Or take a moment, and again, we talk about a lot of this in our leadership training, but take a moment if it's an employee coming to you constantly and saying, what have you done already to try and find the answer? And if they haven't done it, say, well, why don't you go away and do all that? And then let's meet tomorrow morning and we'll talk through it. You have to say no sometimes. You have to put those boundaries in place and you're the only one who can do it. And you can't let people guilt you into stepping outside of those boundaries. Now, there's a few strategies you can use when you're finding yourself in heading towards burnout or quite stressed or quite overwhelmed, and you can just really feel like, things are a little out of control. The first one's cognitive reframing. So this is a strategy for basically just interpreting things differently, because often when something's happening and it feels quite negative and we're in a negative state of frame of mind, it just keeps building. So like, you might get an email from someone, and when you first read it, you go, oh my God, this person's really annoyed at me. What have I done? But if you stop and take a step back and reframe it and you read the email, you might go, actually, it sounds like this person's really stressed about this situation. That's their stress coming out and it's making me feel that way. How can I help them with their issue? That it's not directed at me, it's just their stress coming out. We need to sometimes remember that not everything's how our brain first tells us. It can be a little bit mean. The I have to versus I get to mindset, often this is used around things like going to the gym, like, oh, I have to go to the gym, or hey, I'm lucky I've got a gym membership and I get to go to the gym tonight and really work on my health and well-being. So it's shifting your mindset and the way that you're framing things into yourself in your head from a negative to a positive. Having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. A lot of people are very aware of this sort of thinking, but it's really making sure that you try to see things that go wrong or things that are hard or stressful as an opportunity. How can we reframe it? Something went wrong. What can we learn from that, rather than, oh my God, the world's going to fall in? Because again, those kind of thoughts and the way of approaching things, particularly when we're already burning out, that's where our mindset goes. Well, someone once said to me, I'm looking at the world through shit colored glasses. And it's true. Like when you're feeling negative, everything feels hard and negative. Or can you switch it to, gee, it's really busy right now and it's really hard, but you know what? This is really positive, and how can we, maybe this will lead to some new work, or again, there's lots of different ways to think about it, but you need to switch up your mindset. I love this perspective rule, the 10-10-10 rule. Will it matter in 10 minutes, 10 months, or 10 years? Because not many things will matter in 10 months. So when you're really feeling overwhelmed or whatever, and or you're really getting upset or frustrated over a particular thing that's happening, ask yourself that question. It can often help really change your perspective. The biggest one is micro breaks, getting up, moving around. Even just 2 to 5 minutes can help reset your mind and your body. And whether it's stepping away from your desk and putting on music and dancing to it, whether it's just going for a walk around the block. Often when you see, I always use this when I see someone in the team that maybe is looking like they're a little bit overwhelmed or flustered or frustrated. I'm like, hey, why don't we walk over and grab a coffee? Because it gives them a break, it gets them away from their desk, it gives their mind a chance to kind of reset, they get a bit of fresh air, and often that's enough just for them to come back and be able to be more positive. And the intentional pause. And this is something as leaders we should use as much as we can, because we don't have to always react in the moment. Sometimes we can stop and think before we actually say something. And when we're burning out and we're stressed, we're much more likely to just respond and react in the moment and then have to fix it. It's okay to pause and go, what's the best response here? You know what? I'm not feeling like this is the right time to have this conversation. I'm really under the pump. Maybe my response needs to be, yep, I need time to think about this. Can we make a time later? You don't have to automatically jump in. It's also important to make sure you're balancing your personal and professional priorities. I prefer work-life integration to work-life balance, because it's about trying to find, there's going to be times where you need to be a lot more at work or a lot more at home, and that's just the way life works. So particularly for a leader or someone who works from home or someone who is a business owner, creating little rituals that signal the start and end of your workday is really important, because you shouldn't try and be on 24/7. Anything over 50 hours a week, like 35 to 45 hours a week is the optimal, research shows, in terms of productivity. Anything after that is such a diminishing return, and the chances of it not being great and taking so much more energy and then you're not recharging has a lot more detriment. So really trying to make sure there's things that you do that really make it clear when the start and end of your day are is important. And I just want to finish with what's probably one of the things that it's biggest, and I say to a lot of clients, is we spend so much time and energy concentrating on things that are outside of our control, particularly when we're dealing with challenging issues with employees and things like that. But what if they do this, and what if they say this, and what if this happens? We need to concentrate on what's in our control, and that's where we need to put our energy. What are we doing? How are we speaking to ourselves? What am I going to do next? What boundaries have I put in place? Not worrying about things that you don't have a lot of control over. And so if, say, for example, you've got a difficult employee issue, if you put your time and energy into worrying about what you can do about it, I can have this next conversation and ask these questions, And once I've got that information, I'll know what to do next, rather than going down the rabbit hole of what ifs. Can just save us so much time and energy, and that can be conserved to actually making good decisions about what is in your control. So final thoughts. Taylor Swift, you should think of your energy like it's a luxury item. Not everyone can afford it. You have to put your oxygen mask on first. You have to make sure that you are available to others, and you are create space to lead others by making sure that you're looking after yourself. We need to give up the delusion that burnout is the inevitable cost of success. And burnout is not the result of doing too much, it's a result of not getting enough rest. We need to recharge our batteries. We need to see that it's not just our time, it's our energy that really matter. So we have got a couple of training towards the end of the year. These will be our last mental health first aid public sessions ever. We're not going to be providing it at Strawberry Seed after this year. So if you've been thinking about wanting to do it and you want to use some hours, now's the time to do it. If you want to do a refresher because you've done with us before, this is the last one we'll be running. So please book in for those if you need to. Our last webinar of 2025 in November is going to be kind of an Ask Me Anything. So what we are asking you to do is, when you register, if you've got a question, a burning question you'd like us to answer for you, when you register, you're asked to include those questions, and we're going to answer as many of them as we can. And if we can't, we're going to put them into webinars for next year. So great way to sort of ask those little questions. So I'm sure we're going to be covering a lot of different, lots of different topics in that session. And that is about it. If anyone has any questions that they would like to ask, please pop them in the Q&A and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. If not, thank you so much for attending today. We really appreciate everyone's support this month and all the things that we've been doing. And hopefully we'll see you at one of our webinars in the future. Thank you.